I didn't find out from a phone call, or a text, or even a tearful confession. I found out from a 37-second video, posted anonymously, captioned only, "Be careful who you marry." It was 3:08 a.m. I was alone in our apartment, sitting on the kitchen floor, wearing the same hoodie I'd proposed in. The refrigerator was humming. The ice maker dumped a tray. I didn't blink. I just kept replaying the video. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because I could. Because deep down, some part of me had been waiting for this moment. I just didn't expect it to come with background music and applause. It starts with the girls' weekend. Here's what I knew. My fiancée, Eloan, yes, that's her real name. Her parents were poets or druids or something, was on her bachelorette weekend. A rental house. A cabin. Some remote place by a lake, 6 hours out. One road in. One road out. There were 7 of them. I knew 4 by name. I trusted maybe 1. Before she left, she hugged me like I was breakable. Not like I was hers. Not like I was safe. Just like I was fragile. A vase she'd once loved and now didn't know where to put. "We'll have no signal," she said. "Don't freak out if I go dark." I didn't freak out. I watched her taillights disappear down our street and felt like I'd just handed something priceless to someone with greasy hands. The video arrived like a bomb. No context. No sender. Just a link. I was too numb to hesitate. I clicked. It opened in some off-brand file viewer. And then it played. It wasn't blurry. It wasn't pixelated. It was cinematic. Shot from the top of a staircase, looking down into a wide-open living room lit only by the soft flicker of a fireplace. I recognized the furniture. The walls. Even the stupid rustic canoe hanging from the ceiling. I'd helped her book this Airbnb. I had the confirmation email still in my inbox. There were people in the room. 6 of them. All women. All in satin pajamas. Laughing, tipsy, moving in slow waves like fish in a tank. The kind of night that smells like cheap wine and overpriced candles. And then, at the 14-second mark, he appeared. He wasn't supposed to be there. Tall. Hoodie. Mask pulled up over his chin. He walked in from the back hallway. Like he belonged. Like this wasn't his first time. No one screamed. No one asked who he was. Instead, one of them, I think her name was Bria, looked up and said, "Finally." The rest laughed. Eloan stood up. She wasn't startled. She wasn't scared. She was already walking toward him like she'd rehearsed it. And then they kissed. Like no one was watching. Like I didn't exist. Like they'd done it before. It wasn't just cheating. It was coordination. I don't know how long I sat there. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just replayed it. Because in the corner of the screen, you could see Bria holding her phone, filming, smiling. This wasn't some drunken mistake. This was an event. A planned moment. A ritual. They weren't partying. They were burying me. To be continued in part 2. The house on Lake Marlowe had no signal, but I went anyway. In the next part, I'll tell you what I did. Because I didn't stay home. I packed a bag. I drove 6 hours. And I found something in that house that wasn't in the video. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not my brother. Not my coworker who was supposed to help me finalize the wedding playlists. Not even my neighbor, who always watches our place when we're out of town. I just packed a bag, backed out of the driveway, and drove. No GPS. Just the address I still had in my inbox and an unreasonable amount of spite pumping through my chest. The road to Lake Marlowe is narrow and ugly. Nothing but twisted trees, loose gravel, and stretches where the air smells like wet bark. It's the kind of place that looks beautiful on Airbnb, but feels like a murder scene in real life. Every mile deeper, the cell signal dropped until eventually, all I had was static on the radio and the sound of Cooper, our golden retriever, whining in the back seat. Yeah, I brought the dog. I didn't want him in the house when everything went down. I didn't trust myself to come back. I got there a little after 10 p.m. No lights were on in the house, but 2 cars were in the gravel driveway, one of which I didn't recognize. It wasn't one of the girls. It was matte black. No plates. No decals. Just parked. Like it belonged. I stayed in my car for 10 minutes, just watching the windows. No movement. No sound. But every bone in my body said they were inside. I left Cooper in the back seat and walked up the gravel path. My feet were shaking. I wasn't even sure what I was planning to do. Ask questions? Demand answers? Burn the house down? I didn't knock. I didn't need to. The door was cracked open. Inside, it smelled like lavender and sweat. The air was thick, humid, like someone had just taken a long shower and left the door open. I stepped in quietly, like a thief. Even though this wasn't theft, it was reclamation. I followed the scent down the hallway, past a set of half-packed suitcases and a wine bottle tipped on its side. Then I saw the fireplace. Still lit. The room from the video. Same chairs. Same layout. Same vibe. But now it was empty. Except for the note. It was lying on the coffee table. Handwritten. Folded in half. Just my name on the front. Not Babe or Dorian. Just you. I picked it up. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely unfold it. It read, "Don't act surprised. You always knew we were pretending." That was it. 12 words. No apology. No explanation. Just a confession hiding in plain sight. I stood there, holding it, staring at the fire like I could crawl inside and disappear. Then I heard something from upstairs. A thud. Quick. Soft. But definitely real. I followed the noise without thinking, moving like my feet weren't attached to my body. The hallway upstairs was lined with mismatched picture frames, none of them holding actual photos. Just empty glass. Like even the house didn't believe in memories anymore. At the end of the hall, one door was cracked. I pushed it open slowly, and my heart stopped. There were candles. Dozens. Maybe more. Placed carefully in a circle around the bed, which was perfectly made. On the pillows sat Alohan's wedding dress, still on its hanger, and her veil, laid across it like a funeral shroud. And on the nightstand, her engagement ring, spinning slowly, like someone had just taken it off. And next to it a phone. Not hers. Mine. My old backup phone. The one I lost last year on a trip. The one I thought I left in an Uber. I picked it up and the screen lit up. Unlocked. No passcode. But a single video queued up and ready to play. The thumbnail showed Alohan in that very room, wearing the dress. Staring directly into the camera. I didn't hit play. Not yet. Because that's when I heard the door downstairs shut. To be continued in part 3. The man with no plates. In part 3, I'll tell you who I found downstairs. And what I learned about the man in the hoodie. Let's just say, he knew me better than I knew myself. And the video? Yeah, I watched it. But not before it was too late. There's a sound the human brain doesn't register right away. That soft, deliberate closing of a door that's meant not to be heard. That's the sound I heard downstairs. It wasn't slammed. It wasn't rushed. It was careful, almost polite. Like whoever shut it already knew I was there and wanted me to know they weren't in a hurry. Like it was part of a script they'd rehearsed. I didn't move at first. Just stood in that candlelit room, surrounded by lace and lies. Watching Alohan's wedding dress slowly shift from the breeze coming through the cracked window. My heart was a drumline. My palms were slick. But my legs, they didn't move. Not until I heard a second sound. A creak, about 6 steps into the hallway below. Floorboards. I'd stepped on them earlier. Loud. Unavoidable. So now I knew 2 things. I wasn't alone, and someone down there knew exactly where I was. I took one last glance at the phone on the nightstand. The paused video still waiting for me to hit play. Alohan's frozen face staring back with an expression I couldn't read. Then I turned and walked toward the stairs, slowly, quietly, like I was stepping into someone else's nightmare. Because this no longer felt like my story. I felt hijacked, displaced, like someone else had picked up the pen halfway through my life and decided to change the genre. The house had gone darker, colder. The fire downstairs must have burned out, or someone had put it out deliberately. I reached the bottom step and stopped. The living room was empty. Not empty like no one had been there, but empty like someone had just left. A single wine glass was still warm to the touch. A chair was pushed slightly out. And on the floor by the fireplace, one of Alohan's earrings. The gold ones with the little obsidian stones she wore when she wanted to feel powerful. I crouched, picked it up, and that's when I heard a voice from behind me. Quiet, but crystal clear. "You're earlier than I expected." I turned so fast I nearly lost my balance. Standing in the hallway near the back entrance was a man I had never seen before, and yet, something about him felt familiar. Maybe it was the way he stood, relaxed, unbothered, like I was the intruder in his home. He was dressed in all black. Fitted hoodie, leather gloves, no hat, short brown hair, maybe mid-30s. And he wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't need to. He just looked at me with a calm, unblinking stare and said, "You weren't supposed to come." I couldn't speak. My throat was dry. I opened my mouth, but all that came out was, "Who are you?" He tilted his head slightly, like I'd asked the wrong question. Then he nodded toward the stairs. Did you watch it? I said nothing. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. No fear in his steps. You should. She worked hard on it. They all did. My skin went cold. I took a step back, reaching instinctively toward the fireplace poker behind me, but he just smiled. Not mockingly, but like he understood. Like he knew me. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. You still think this is about you? That stopped me. He leaned against the doorway like he had all the time in the world and added, You think she betrayed you. That's adorable. But this, he gestured around the house. This was never about betrayal. This was about selection. Selection? I must have looked confused because he chuckled softly and said, You weren't the first to stand where you're standing. You're just the first one dumb enough to walk in without watching the tape. And then, without another word, he turned and walked out the back door. I ran after him, but by the time I made it through the screen door, he was already gone. No car, no sound, nothing but trees and fog and the distant echo of water lapping against the dock. I stood there for a long time, trying to breathe, trying to think. Then I went back inside, locked the door, climbed the stairs, and sat on the bed beside the veil. And finally, I pressed play. To be continued in part 4. She made it just for me. In the next part, I'll describe what was on the video. Not all of it, because some things you can't unsee, but enough for you to understand what I realized too late. They were never trying to hide it. They wanted me to see it. And worse, they wanted me to choose. I didn't hit play immediately. I stared at the screen for maybe a full minute, just watching Alohan's frozen face. Not smiling, not crying, not blank. Something in between. Something unreadable, like the moment before a coin lands. The candles around me had burned lower now, some flickering out completely, and the room was starting to smell like melted wax and slow panic. I sat down on the edge of the bed, not the mattress, not the floor, the edge, as if I didn't belong entirely in the space. Then I pressed play. It didn't start with her. Not at first. The video opened with static, the kind that buzzes in your teeth, followed by a flash of white, and then silence. No intro, no music, just a slow pan across the same house I was sitting in. Shot in daylight. Empty. Still. Each room lingering for a few seconds longer than necessary. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway. My breath caught when the camera turned into the mirror in the upstairs hallway, and I saw it wasn't Alohan holding the phone. It was me. Except it wasn't a reflection. It was a direct recording, like I had filmed it. Same clothes. Same hair. Same tired eyes. I don't remember making this video. I don't remember being here before. But there I was, walking through the house like I was inspecting it. Like I was preparing something. The screen flickered again and cut to Alohan. She was in this room. This exact room. But the bed wasn't made yet. No candles. No dress. Just her, sitting on the floor, knees pulled up, back against the wall. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice was barely above a whisper. If you're watching this, you either love me, or you think you do. She didn't blink for a long time. Then she looked up, directly into the lens. We tested this house before. He didn't come. You did. That already makes you different. I sat forward, my spine ice. There's something I need you to understand, Dorian, she continued, her voice steadier now. None of this was random. Not the proposal. Not the fights. Not the playlist you made me. Even that stupid bookstore where we met. You always thought it was fate. But we chose you. I chose you. I felt my blood shift in my veins. And now it's your turn. Cut to black. Then, a new scene. This time, the camera was set up in the living room downstairs. Alohan was standing in front of the fireplace, wearing the dress. Around her, the other girls were seated, silent, all in white. The lighting was soft, artificial, like they'd set it up for something formal. Alohan lifted her hand. Someone handed her a sheet of paper. She began reading. He will arrive on the 4th day. He will enter without knocking. He will touch the fireplace. He will find the note. He will go upstairs. He will not watch the video, not yet. Then he will hear the door. I froze. That was exactly what had happened. Exactly. Every beat. Word for word. If he makes it to this point, he's past the first condition. She paused, looked straight into the lens again. Now we find out if he's ready. Cut to black again. But before the next scene started, the screen glitched, briefly. And in that half-second of distortion, I swear I saw something behind Alohan. Something large. Moving. I scrubbed back, frame by frame, pausing on that flicker. And what I saw nearly made me drop the phone. It wasn't human. Too tall. Too thin. No face. Just an outline. Like it had been burned into the air itself. The women didn't react to it. They just kept looking forward. As if they couldn't see it. As if it wasn't for them. The video cut again. This time, the screen filled with static, and a voice, not hers, not mine, said clearly, "The offering has arrived." And then it ended. Just like that. The phone went dark. No option to replay. It shut off in my hand like the battery died, but it had been at 94%. I sat there for what felt like forever. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. My brain felt like it was scrambling for exits that didn't exist. Because the worst part wasn't the video. It wasn't the man downstairs. It wasn't even the fact that my entire relationship might have been fabricated. It was the fact that she knew exactly what I would do. She knew I would come. She knew I would watch it. She knew I would understand, eventually. But what I still didn't know was why. To be continued in part 5, selection isn't random. The next part will tell you what I discovered when I tried to leave. Because the car wasn't where I left it. And Cooper, the dog I brought to feel safe, wasn't barking anymore. Whatever they were preparing me for, it had already started. I don't remember standing up. 1 minute I was on the edge of the bed, the phone now dead and lifeless in my hand. The next I was stumbling into the hallway like I was half drunk, half possessed. My legs felt stiff. My mouth was dry. I had the same sensation you get when you wake up from a vivid dream and can't remember where you are. Only this wasn't a dream. This was curated, scripted, precision-guided madness, and I had walked straight into it. I needed air. I told myself I was going outside to breathe, but that wasn't true. I wanted to see the car. I wanted to see Cooper, my golden retriever, my comfort animal, the only innocent soul left in this entire debacle. I remember grabbing the keys off the dresser like that action would tether me to reality, as if holding something familiar would push back the surreal fog swallowing the house. I moved fast down the stairs, turning corners like something was behind me, even though the house was still dead silent. At the front door, I paused, not out of fear, but because of how quiet it had become. Not peaceful quiet. Hollow quiet. The kind that swallows footsteps and makes you feel like even your thoughts are being listened to. I turned the doorknob and stepped out onto the porch. And then my heart plummeted. The car was gone. Gone. No tire marks. No broken glass. Just the patch of gravel where it had been. The dust had settled. It wasn't recently driven away. It had been gone long enough for the earth to pretend it had never been there. And worse, there was no barking, no whining, no scratching, no Cooper. The leash was still tied to the porch railing, snapped at the clasp like it had been ripped off, not unclipped. There were deep claw marks on the wood planks beneath it, frantic ones. Desperate. I dropped to my knees and ran my hands over the wood like I could read it. Like the grooves and splinters would tell me what happened. But they didn't tell me anything. They just screamed in silence. I called his name once. Then again, louder. Nothing. No rustling in the woods. No whimper. No crunch of paws on leaves. He was just gone. Like the car. Like the rules. Like my life. I stood up, fists clenched, vision hot. My body wanted to run. But where? Into the trees? Toward the road that probably didn't exist anymore? Back inside, where nothing made sense. I started yelling. Loud, broken words. Questions no one would answer. Names that suddenly felt hollow in my mouth. Eloan. Rhea. The man with no plates. I screamed until I tasted blood. And then, I saw the candle. A single candle. Placed in the center of the gravel drive, flickering like it had no business being there. It wasn't there before. And next to it, something small and white, folded paper. I staggered toward it, hands shaking, breath shallow. My brain was done with logic. It was operating on some ancient instinct, the kind cavemen probably used when deciding whether to eat berries or die trying. I picked up the note. Return when ready. Alone. No signature. No threat. Just instruction. I crushed the note in my hand and turned toward the trees. I was seconds away from sprinting into the forest when I heard it. Not a voice, not an animal. A sound I will never forget. A click. Not a branch. Not a bug. A camera shutter. Someone was watching. I froze. My skin went cold, not from fear, but from recognition. I knew that sound. I had used that same shutter. On my honeymoon. On birthdays. On the day I proposed. Someone was taking my photo. From the dark. I backed up slowly toward the house, every instinct in my body screaming. but I never saw who it was. I never saw a lens, a shape, a face. Just the lingering sound of that shutter echoing off the trees like a reminder. This is still being documented. And for what? I stepped inside, closed the door, locked it, then double-locked it. And that's when I noticed the lights. Every room in the house, glowing now. Soft yellow, warm, welcoming, like the house was finally awake. And it was waiting. To be continued in part 6. The ceremony they didn't finish. In the next part, I'll tell you what I found when I followed the lights. They weren't leading me back to Alohan. They were leading me to a place beneath the house. A room I didn't know existed. And inside it, they left something behind. Something that should never have been real. The lights didn't flicker. They pulsed. Each one, hallway sconce, kitchen bulb, chandelier, glowing not with the mechanical hum of electricity, but with something slower, almost rhythmic, like a breath. Or a heartbeat. The moment I closed the door, the house felt different. Not just in light, but in temperature and sound. The silence was no longer silence. It was expectation. The air felt coiled, like it was holding something back. I didn't call out her name this time. Alohan had made her message clear. I wasn't here to find her. I was here to choose. And whatever the hell that meant, I was starting to believe it wasn't a metaphor. I walked through the hallway, past the living room and into the kitchen, where the light above the table brightened slightly as I entered. On the counter sat a small wooden box I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't there earlier, I was sure of that. The box was square, old, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. There was no lock, no hinge, just a slit along the middle and a folded cloth placed neatly beside it. A deep navy blue, embroidered with a crescent moon and a triangle below it. I didn't open the box. Not yet, because the refrigerator began to hum louder. I turned to it, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I saw something truly out of place. There were photographs pinned to the fridge, not with magnets, but with small silver tacks embedded directly into the metal. 9 photographs, neatly arranged in a grid, all taken from different angles of the house. Some I recognized from the earlier video, but others were new. One showed me standing outside the cabin, looking toward the woods. Another was from the moment I picked up Cooper's leash. Another from when I screamed. These weren't images captured by surveillance cameras. They were framed, chosen, composed. Someone had been photographing me, recently, and printing the images in real time. And in the center of the grid was one final photo, slightly larger than the others. It showed the basement door. I hadn't noticed it before. Not on the house tour video, not in person. The floor plan alone showed me when we booked the cabin never listed a basement. But there it was. A black door at the end of the back hallway, hidden behind a tapestry of abstract red and white. I felt my stomach sink as I realized the tapestry was gone now. They wanted me to see it. I walked slowly toward the back hallway. The photos still burned into my mind, the air thick with something unspoken. My footsteps sounded foreign, not like they were echoing, but like they were being followed. I reached the black door. There was no handle, just a small, round indentation in the wood, as if waiting for something to be pressed into it. I didn't have to guess. I walked back to the kitchen, took the wooden box from the counter, and this time, I opened it. Inside was a key, but not a modern one. It was ancient, iron, heavy, engraved with the same moon and triangle symbol as the cloth. Beneath it, a strip of old yellowed paper. You were never meant to stay above. I took the key and returned to the door, pressed it into the indentation. It clicked, not with the mechanical sound of a lock turning, but like something breathing out. The door creaked open. The staircase behind it was steep, narrow, lit by a single flickering bulb halfway down. Stone walls, damp air. It smelled like earth, salt, and old fire. I descended. Every step echoed like it was being recorded. Not just heard, archived. Like the house itself was a memory being written in real time. At the bottom, the air changed again. The space opened into a wide room, circular, carved into the foundation of the house like a chamber designed for something specific. The walls were lined with shelves, and on them sat objects I can't fully describe. Things made of wax and rope, feathers and ash, preserved eyes, pages sealed in resin. The floor was etched with symbols, large and deliberate, centering around a stone altar. And on that altar was something that nearly buckled my knees. My name, etched into the stone. Not written, etched, permanent, deep. Beneath it, another phrase, in handwriting that made my chest seize up. He chose not to leave. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't Aloan having a breakdown or some twisted game her friends were playing. This was ritual, coordinated, ancient. They didn't bring me here to watch me break. They brought me here because I was always going to stay. I backed away slowly, breath shallow, heart hammering. But as I turned toward the stairs, I noticed something that stopped me cold. On the wall beside the staircase hung a dozen photos. All of me. But not from this trip. Not from the proposal. From before I ever met Aloan. Images of me walking to work, eating at cafes, sitting in my apartment 2 years before she and I had accidentally met at that bookstore. They'd been watching me for years. Studying. Waiting. And now, the final step of their ceremony was happening, underground. With me. To be continued in part 7. The one before me didn't run fast enough. In the next part, I'll tell you what I found behind the curtain at the back of the chamber. Because there was someone else. And he left something behind. A final warning, carved in blood. I didn't know I was crying until I tasted salt. It wasn't grief, and it wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something more precise than that. The kind of emotion you feel when you realize you've walked into a room that's never meant to have a door out. And worse, that someone spent a very long time building it exactly for you. The chamber beneath the house was colder now, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. My name etched into the stone no longer felt symbolic. It felt terminal, permanent. I stared at it until my vision blurred, but the letters didn't change. They were cut with care, as if someone had practiced it before carving the real thing. I stepped away from the altar. Every instinct in my body begged me to run, to sprint back up those stairs and force the door open, find a weapon, scream for help. But I didn't move, because that's when I noticed it. Tucked into the curved shadow at the back of the chamber, behind one of the shelves, was a thick, dark red curtain. Out of place. Too new. Too clean. The rest of the basement felt like it hadn't been touched in decades. Dirt floor, moss clinging to corners, forgotten tools leaning against the walls like relics from a lost world. But the curtain? It looked like it was hung yesterday. I walked toward it slow. Each step across the stone floor echoed unnaturally, like I was moving through a vacuum. There were no insects. No creaks. Just the sound of my own breath, uneven and ragged, as I reached out and grabbed the heavy fabric. I expected resistance, maybe even something behind it, but it slid open easily. Too easily. Behind the curtain wasn't a room. It was a corridor. Narrow, uneven, carved directly into the rock, like someone had tunneled it out with their hands and time. The walls were rough, the air wet, and it carried a smell that I still can't properly describe, sweet, rotting, metallic, like old blood and wilted flowers. I hesitated. Then I stepped in. The corridor stretched farther than I thought possible. From the outside, this cabin couldn't possibly contain something this deep, this long. But inside this passage, reality was irrelevant. Space didn't obey logic. I walked for what felt like 15 minutes, maybe more, and just as I began to wonder if I'd ever reach an end, I saw a faint glow ahead. I slowed, crouched. The tunnel opened into a smaller chamber, no more than 10 feet across. And at the center was a rusted metal chair, and someone was sitting in it. I stayed perfectly still. The figure wasn't moving, head slumped forward, arms slack. I waited for breath, sound, twitch, anything. But there was nothing, just the drip-drip of water from somewhere unseen. I edged closer. The body, or what was left of it, had been there a long time. Skin paper-thin and gray, lips cracked open in a frozen expression of what could have been screaming or laughter. The eyes were gone. Not gouged, just hollow. Dried. The man's wrists were bound to the arms of the chair with thick, tar-black ropes that looked fused to the bone. Around his neck was a chain holding a rectangular metal plate, and carved into the plate were 5 words. I refused to complete it. On the ground near his feet was a small object. A recorder. A cheap, plastic, handheld device covered in dust. I reached for it, hand trembling, and pressed play. Static. Then a voice. Shaky. Human. If you're hearing this, they picked you too. And if you made it this far, you probably think you can finish what I didn't. Don't. Please, don't. That woman isn't real. She's a pattern. A mask. The only thing real here is what they need, and they only need one thing. The recording crackled. Then another voice broke in, hers. Aloan. but it wasn't a voice I recognized. Her tone was flat, monotone. Participant 42 failed selection. Recording terminated. A beep. Silence. The device powered off on its own. I sat down. Not by choice. My legs gave out. I leaned against the stone wall, knees pulled in, trying to keep it together as my brain scrambled to rearrange everything I knew. Aloan wasn't just part of it. She was something else entirely. Maybe not even a person. Maybe just a role, a shape, a vessel used again and again. And the man in the chair? He had been me. Or someone like me. Not random. Not unlucky. Chosen. Just like I was. And that's when I noticed it, scrawled into the wall beside him, etched with something sharp and angry. Not a name. Not a symbol. A question. How many Dorians have there been? It wasn't a mistake. The spacing. The misspelling. It was a clue. They weren't just selecting people. They were repeating them. To be continued in Part 8. The end is in the script, finale. In the final part, I'll reveal what I did when I got back upstairs. Because the house wasn't the same. The walls had changed. The video was gone. And Aloan was waiting. Not to explain, not to apologize. She wanted me to say yes. I don't remember climbing out of the tunnel. I don't remember how long I sat next to the man in the chair, or when the last candle in the corridor flickered out. Time was a blur. My mind felt like it had been shattered and put back together wrong. The only clear memory I have is of crawling up those narrow stairs in the basement, my fingernails cracking against the stone, repeating a single phrase in my head like a mantra. I am not the next one. I am not the next one. I am not. When I finally reached the main floor, everything was wrong. The house was brighter. Not just lit, glowing. The walls, the furniture, even the floorboards looked cleaner, newer, like they had been reset. As if the house had shed its skin while I was underground. The air was warm again, fragrant, like spring rain and lavender. And standing in the center of the living room, wearing a long white dress that shimmered in the light, was Aloan. But not the Aloan from the video. Not the one who whispered threats and riddles and vanished into candlelight. This Aloan looked human. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hands trembled. She looked smaller, softer, as if everything had unraveled for her too. I didn't speak. Neither did she. For a long moment, we just stood there, breathing in each other's presence like two survivors meeting after a disaster neither could name. Then she said the one thing I didn't expect. You stopped it. I blinked. What? Her voice cracked. You didn't finish it. You walked away from the altar. You didn't follow the final steps. That's never happened before. I stared at her, heart pounding. What happens now? She took a shaky breath, then whispered, I think we get to leave. For a moment, I didn't believe her. I expected the lights to flicker, the walls to bleed, the man with no plates to step through the door and declare that I'd failed. But none of that happened. Instead, Aloan stepped toward me, cautiously, like I might disappear, and took my hand. It was warm, real. I pulled her into my arms and held her tighter than I ever had before. And she didn't resist. She didn't speak. She just wept quietly against my chest, and for the first time since I arrived at that cursed house, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel. Relief. We walked out together. No traps. No tricks. The cabin didn't try to stop us. The trees didn't close in. The gravel driveway was still empty, but as we reached the road, a car, my car, appeared just over the hill, parked neatly by the tree line. And Cooper, muddy, tired, but alive, was sitting beside it. He barked once when he saw me. I dropped to my knees and hugged him until I couldn't breathe. Aloan scratched behind his ears and whispered something in his fur that I didn't catch. But he calmed instantly. We drove for hours without speaking. The road didn't loop. It didn't vanish. We just left. The next day, the cabin's listing disappeared from every site we searched. The address no longer worked on GPS. My emails about the rental were gone from my inbox. It was as if the house never existed. But we knew better. We never spoke of the basement. Not the video. Not the chair. But we changed. Aloan began therapy. Real therapy. Not whatever ritualistic programming they'd done to her. She said she remembered bits and pieces. A life before me. A life without choices. But now, she was choosing. Every day. And I chose too. We got married 6 months later. Quiet ceremony. Just friends. No firelight. No rituals. Just vows written by hand. And a promise we both knew meant more than words. A real promise. The kind you don't script. The kind you survive for. And sometimes, when the moon is full and Cooper growls at shadows that aren't there, I remember what she told me that first night, before everything changed. The moon looks like a promise tonight. She wasn't wrong. But this time, it's one we get to keep.